In this video, I will explain how to use funnel explorations in Google Analytics 4. To get started, log into your Google Analytics 4 property and on the left sidebar, choose Explore. Then select Funnel Exploration. Explorations consist of three sections. One is variables. Here you can manage your segments, dimensions, and metrics. Then you have settings. So these are specifically related to the exploration method that you're currently using. So all the settings related to funnel will be here. And then we have the output or the actual report. When you create a funnel exploration, by default, you will get a funnel that looks like this. But we are going to create a new funnel. Therefore, we can delete these steps right here by clicking the X. To configure funnel steps, click the pencil in the Steps section. And here you can add multiple steps by clicking the Add Step right here. So let's create a basic e-commerce funnel. Right now I'm working with the official GA4 demo property, which is connected to the official Google merchandise store. And I know that they are tracking things like product views, then events when someone adds to cart, then the checkout events and the purchase events. So let's add a first condition, and this will be for the moment when the product is viewed. So we can click here, and then you can either look at the various dimensions or configurations that you want to use. But in this case, I will just start typing view item because I know that this event is tracked. View item is not an event that is automatically available in all GA4 properties out of the box. This is part of the e-commerce tracking where you, maybe with the help of developer or with some plugin, have to configure these events so that they are sent to Google Analytics. So I will select this event and my first step is kind of done. I can name this viewed product, and just to keep things less cluttered, for now I will delete the other steps. And inside a step, you can also add multiple conditions. For example, when you want to track when the product was viewed and you also want to add an additional condition, for example, when page path contains something, then you can add that condition right here. This step will be treated as completed only if both of these conditions are met. If you have a step where a visitor can complete one step or another, then you can select the OR option right here. So in this case, it means that either this condition must be met or this condition must be met. You can also add some additional conditions inside this row right here. So for example, you want to look for view item, and then you can look at some other parameters that are sent together with the event. For example, if page location contains the word t-shirt or something like that. But in my case, I don't need this. Then you can either copy this step. If you want, you can remove a particular step, or you can add a step above this step or below it. Now let's move to the next step. So I will click Add Step right here. And here we have several additional options. The first one is the order of the steps. In 99% of situations, you will need to keep indirectly followed by. This means that if a visitor completes this step and then at some point in the future completes the next step, then the funnel report will show that the visitor completed both steps. But if you select is directly followed by, it means that second step must directly follow the first step. And if we have, for example, here add to cart, here we have view item, but between these two events, any other event happens, for example, page view, scroll event, or something like that, then Google Analytics will treat this that the second step was not completed because between these two events, there was another event. But in real life, there definitely can be other events between two steps. So in most cases, you will need to keep this as indirectly followed by. If your funnel is time sensitive, then you can use this option right here. You can add a time constraint so that, let's say, the second step must be completed within 5 hours after the first step. But in this case, I don't need this, so I will just disable it and click confirm. Let's configure the second step. In this case, I want to see how many people added any product to cart. This property tracks an event called add to cart, and I select it right here. Then let's name this step, then add another step. Here, I want to see how many people started checkout. For that, there is an event called begin checkout. And then the fourth step, let's say it will be a purchase. And for that, this property is tracking an event called purchase. On the right side, you can see the preview of how many users would be included in this particular funnel. So let's click apply. And here we will see those columns displayed right here. By the way, if you find this tutorial helpful, then click the subscribe button. This is the best free way to support our channel. I would really appreciate it, and it will help me dedicate more time to creating tutorials for you. In this chart right here, you can see the numbers. You can also zoom in because there might be cases where one column is very short. So you can click these icons, or you can just hover your mouse and scroll with your mouse, and it will do the same thing. If you see this wave right here, it means that the column is very tall and it would not fit this area right here. Then we have a breakdown dimension. So by default, we see device category added here. And if we zoom out a bit and then reload the page because the table did not zoom out properly, we will see the abandonment rate of each step based on the device category. Right now, it looks like the highest abandonment rate is for the mobile, which might indicate that the experience for the mobile devices is not as good as for the desktop. You can also select if you want a different breakdown dimension. For example, instead of device category, so we can remove it, we can add another one. You can click here and see what is available. If you have a particular dimension in mind and it's not available here, then you can go to dimensions, click plus, and then select a dimension that you need and add confirm. Here, the options depend on what you have in the dimensions section right here. But I already have country, so I can either just drag and drop it, or I can click here and select country. The breakdown will show by default 5 rows per each step. There's also another way how to visualize the funnel. So the standard funnel is where you see the columns, but if you want to see how the funnel completion was changing over time, you can switch to trended funnel, where each step will have its own line right here in the chart. You can also click here to look just at a particular funnel step. But personally, most often I use the standard funnel. You can also select whether the funnel is open or closed, but I will explain this a bit later in this video. And if you want to look just at a subset of your data, for example, only those who are coming from Google Organic, or maybe those who are coming just from paid ads, then you can use segments, but more about this also a bit later. Then here in the chart, we also can see the elapsed time. By default, it is disabled, but if you want, you can enable it. And it will show the average time it takes the user to go from one step to another. So this might give you some additional context. Then we have next action. It can show you on each step what the visitors did next. For example, here we can add an event name. And if you hover your mouse on a column, you will see what were top 5 next actions. However, the event name is not as useful. Maybe it would be more interesting to see the next pages where the visitors went. However, if I click here, I don't have the page path option. This is because it's not selected in the variables column. I can click here, the plus, and then select page path, click the checkbox, and then confirm. Now I can go here and add page path as the next action. And now if I hover my mouse, I can see where the visitors went next from this particular funnel step. Then we can also filter this report, because right now it includes all visitors from all countries, all regions that completed at least one step right here, or at least the first one. But if you are focusing just on a particular region, as an example, then you could click here, and let's say that we want to look only at those visitors where country exactly matches, and then United States, and click apply. Since we have country as a breakdown dimension, we kind of no longer need it because we are looking only at the United States traffic, so we can delete the breakdown. And here is what our report looks like. You can also do the right click on the column of the chart and then create segment from those particular users. You can also do the right click on the abandonment rate and then create a segment from that. By the way, did you know that I have a bunch of free ebooks on Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics? So if you want to better learn these topics, then click the link below the video, download those ebooks, and get started. And now let's take a look at the feature that I mentioned earlier in this video, and that is Make Open Funnel. By default, Google Analytics 4 funnels are closed. It means that visitors can enter the funnel only at the first step. If the visitors for some reason skip the first step, but they complete the other steps, they will not be included in the funnel. But if you make the funnel open, it means that visitors might skip one of the first steps. For example, they might skip the first step and the second step and enter just at the third step. Or they might skip just the first step and enter the second step. And if some people actually enter the funnel somewhere in the middle of it, you will see visualization like this, where we have a portion of visitors, then this white space, and then the rest of the visitors. So this blue line at the top shows that there were new entries. And if you hover your mouse, the tooltip will also show that. However, what you need to keep in mind is that if the visitor enters the funnel at some step, that visitor no longer can skip subsequent steps. So if the visitor enters the funnel right here, and then does not complete the other two steps, it means that the visitor will be included in the new funnel entries, but also that visitor will be included in the abandonment numbers right here. I understand that this might sound confusing, so let me explain this in a bit different way. I will start with the open funnel. Let's say that I have a funnel consisting of 3 steps, step A, B, and C. And then there are several situations of how visitors complete those steps. The first user completes all the steps, then the second user skips the first step and then completes step B and step C. Then we have user number 3 who skips the second step, and then user number 4 who completes only the last step, which means that the visitor enters the funnel only at the last step. So now let's see how Google Analytics 4 will count users and how it will display the funnel steps. So when it comes to the first user, all 3 steps will be counted because the visitor entered at the first step and then completed all of them. The second user will also be counted because the user entered at the second step, and this is an open funnel. Step number 3 will also be counted. Then the first step of user number 3 will be counted because that's where the visitor entered the funnel, but then that visitor skipped the second step. That is why step number 3 will not be counted. And then user number 4 will be included because that's where the visitor entered the funnel. So in total, we have 2 users at the first step, 2 users at the second step, and 3 users at the third step. And visually, it will look like this. We have 2 users here, then 1 user advances to the second step, but a second user is added right here. So that user entered the funnel here. Then those 2 users advanced to the third step, and then a 4th user has entered the funnel in this step. So in total, we have 2, 2, and 3. Now let's take a look at the same situations, but closed funnel. So the first user will be counted in all 3 steps because that's the first step where the visitor entered and all other steps were completed. Then user number 2 will not be included because the first step was skipped, and this is closed funnel. Then we have user number 3. The first step will be counted. The second is skipped. That is why step number 3 will be not counted. And then user number 4 will not be counted because that user skipped step 1 and step 2. In total, the user count in the first step will be 2, then 1, and then 1. And visually, it will look like this. 2 users in the first step, then drop off, and we have only 1 user, and then 1 user right here. Once you make the funnel open, then you can hover your mouse, for example, here, and you can see how many new funnel entries were there, and then how many users reached this step from the previous step of the funnel. The same is applied here and here. If the number of new entries was higher, then you could also visually see another line above this line right here. But even if I zoom in, I won't be able to clearly see that because the numbers of new entries are very low. But visually, it would look something similar to this one, where we have users at the bottom who advanced from the previous step, then some empty space, and another part of the column where we see the new entrances. As I've said previously, you can also compare several segments. And right now, when I'm recording this video, you can add up to 4 segments, but then the report becomes pretty crowded. But it's still quite useful if you want to compare, let's say, 2 segments. For example, here, I would like to compare direct traffic against paid traffic. So I can just double click here, and then each segment gets its own color, which is represented in the chart right here. If I hover my mouse on one color, then that is highlighted. And if I hover right here, the other color is highlighted. And I can also see the completion rates between two segments right here, which can be quite useful. If you have some custom segment in mind that you would like to use in this report, but you don't see it right here, then you can click the plus and create a segment of your own. But this goes out of scope of this tutorial. If you want to learn more about segments, then you can take a look at the description of this video where I will share some additional resources. And then there is one final thing that I wanted to share, but I don't have enough permissions in this GA4 property. That's why I created a very basic sample funnel in one of my demo properties. If you have enough permissions in your property, you can make this funnel report available in the reports section. And you can do that by first configuring the report, then clicking this icon right here, which is called Save as a Report in the library. Then you can name this. I will call this funnel example, and then click save. Then you go to reports, go to library, and then you should edit one of the collections right here. For example, I would like to add the report in the engagement section. So this is in the lifecycle collection. So I will click edit lifecycle collection. Then I will look for example report that I just created, and then I will drag it from here to the engagement section like this. Then save, and save changes to the current collection. Now, if I click back, then go to engagement and funnel example, I will see that report right here. And I can also quickly switch between open and closed funnels. But of course, right now I don't have much data in this report, so this funnel does not make sense. Maybe I should select longer time period, and this looks somewhat like a funnel. You can also select the breakdown dimensions here, for example, by country, and then have a quick look. So the benefit of this is that if you have some funnel that you regularly are visiting, or maybe your coworkers would like to see, then you can add that funnel report in the reports section, and other people who have access to this property will be able to see this report with just a couple of clicks. And that's how you can use funnel exploration reports in GA4. But we were just scratching the surface here. If you want to learn much more about Google Analytics and how to benefit from it, then take a look at my complete GA4 course. I will post a link to it below the video. And in that course, I put a lot of emphasis on funnels. If you found this video useful, hit the like button. That will help me understand what videos do you like and what should I create in the future. Also, if you want to learn more about Google Tag Manager or GA4, then subscribe to this channel. My name is Julius, this is Analytics Mania, and I'll see you in the next video.